Welcome, every and everyone, to this session of the seventh edition of the Plural Positivity World Conference. This session is presented by Jane Tambree, covering important and sensitive topics including naming of violent crimes, the setting of the jail, the parallels between my experience and my clients, all of whom have suffered trauma in some form. Please remember to prioritize your self-care during this session. You're encouraged to take breaks whenever needed and honor your collective emotional well-being. If you have questions for the presenter, please share them under the Questions tab so they can be addressed during the live Q&A. Afterward, we warmly invite you to visit this presenter's booth where you'll find helpful PDFs and additional free resources. Now, without further ado, it is my honor and pleasure to introduce our wonderful presenter to you all. Here is Jane Tambree.
Greetings all. My name is Jane Tambree. My pronouns are she, her. My system doesn't have a unique identifier, and in consulting within, there doesn't appear to be any insult or opposition to that. Perhaps because the diagnosis of DID, although now known publicly, has not included identities by name to more than a very few select people in my life. I saw that as respectful of each altar, some of whom do not want to be known outside of us. I'm excited to have been chosen to speak at the Plural Positivity World Conference, with the focus being on resilience as resistance. I had to look up the definitions of these words to frame my thinking, and this is what I found. Resilience is defined as successfully adapting to challenges through mental and behavioral flexibility and adjustment to external and internal demands. Resistance is defined as a refusal to comply or accept. The path of least resistance is about flow. The path of most resistance is about endurance, strength, and the power of spirit. I'm calling this talk Inside Out, which I hope becomes clearer as I share. And here's a content warning. I'm going to be speaking about specific types of trauma, psychiatric illness, animal harm, criminal behavior, and abandonment. My story is not one of consciously setting out to adapt, be flexible, or adjust, nor was it a deliberate move to show strength or power over any challenge. But my system had other plans for me. My silent and spoken rebellion saved my life. Diagnosed over 40 years ago, initially navigating the surfacing of alters, their memories, their appearances, their perspectives, their vulnerabilities, their skills, through therapy, journaling, and a committed and careful exploration, my system was introducing themselves to me, or me to them. This was a deep, precious, often tragic recalling or reliving of earlier events. I was afraid in so much as I wasn't sure that I would be able to find the assistance I needed as things unfolded. At the same time, after completing graduate school, I took my first job treating sexually abused children. Some see it as a coincidence that I found myself working with those who mirrored some of my experience. I now see it as guided. Looking back, I wondered what the need was for me in particular to be working with people who have had similar victimization, and why I would not run or be scared or be unable to join my clients on their path. Obviously, working with victims is not done in isolation. I was exposed to perpetrators, and then again, not so accidental. I began working in my next job, which is a maximum security male prison. Not too long in, I found myself asking my supervisor whether I could provide counseling to a man found guilty of rape. This would have been an added responsibility that I sought. Something was rumbling within. I felt a competence, a need, and in my distant lens, I felt a responsibility to attend to them, to reduce the chance that they would recidivate or harm someone else. Personally, internally, I had been introduced to parts who had not revealed any harm having been done to them, but rose within our system with capacities very useful in this work. Again, not so coincidental. One describes herself as having the competence of a lawyer, having the ability to argue a point for a specific result, being firm, confident, and very often direct. The other, without the need to assess, compartmentalize. She is open, caring, without judgment, and of course in cooperation with me, who has graduated from a school that teaches clinical skills, which when combined with my existing intellect and spirit, made a team fully capable of the work as a forensic and psychiatric condition. Excuse me. Newly diagnosed, we negotiated to have the three of us arrive to work and as needed, one or more of us would be in the forefront and recede as necessary, but always available. In listening to the detained men, I was learning that quite often they had come from a home life of harm, absences, few economic resources, little formal education, and tragically, no sense of the future, living recklessly, outwardly manifesting their early trauma. For me, the stage was being set for encountering them less so as the circumstance they were involved in, and more along the lines of a continuum. This humanized them. I questioned how anyone tolerates the loss of control of their agency, the literal incarceration of the body, mind, spirit, for however long was ordered by a judge. The locking of cell doors stunned me, and somehow I took it in stride. I knew eventually that my body, mind, and spirit had suffered my own sort of detention in basement corners, closets, a loss of control needing to submit to my style of powerlessness. How was I going to withstand years of torment, harm, trapped mostly unconscious, as my system began to develop unbeknownst to me? When I allow myself to return to my early life in memory, or I'm returned there without consent, my breathing is impacted, my heart rate changes, my mind is frantically looking for a way out. The experience becomes intolerable, depending upon which alter is regressed, and reliving the memory. I have difficulty realizing I am not in the present moment with full agency, resources, and power. I want to read a poem entitled 3. This was written to honor a toddler alter who currently has selective mutism, who has been carrying some of the most horrific of recalls from me, until I became ready to receive the story. Those events still reside within her. She has not been relieved of them. My father killed God. I was a baby watching him, wondering why I took a side, voiceless. The devil had arrived, yet what did I know of what could happen when the hands of men were lent sinister, following follower to the wrong destiny? What weakness did one need to possess to get in line with the wicked? A giant, lumbering 237 pounds, decrepit without total control, nonetheless powerful, force determining what he claimed to own. God never had a face spoken of on Friday nights. We dressed pretending, as we were expected to do, climbing into heaviness, iron slowly sailing to a beautiful place of spiritual death. The clothes fit masking the scars unseen by those who might have helped had they only imagined. When the temple clothes were removed, he made a cult of us. God was cursed about in the crypt, given that the men who gathered there came from hell, given that the men who gathered there brought me to serve it. What did God look like? What could God have possibly looked like? My skin as the images on earth crawling by, touching down in 1961, in 2020, in 1984, down 12 steps. The men who accompanied him were the faces of the God I denied, hated, feared. Confusion, a trembling in my heart is a clue. She came to me in sensation. I came to know her as grace emanating, a lion's mane, a rescuing halo draped. I could see her. He wouldn't let me touch her. I dreamed for her all the years I can remember. I didn't know she was seeing me too. I didn't know to notice we were merged. She cradled me, even when alone, terrified. Every glimpse of her kept me until she disappeared. She, like most of us, ebbed beyond the threshold, or did I go underground to a place I couldn't easily access? Rubble strewn, my bones, my flesh, a body never to recover. Left in the shape of mosaic, to discover the portrayal of what could have been, were the parts to find their way back to any semblance of one. Intentionally shattered forever, I grieved in 1984 when first told. I stopped thinking of her. Who then would pray for me? Who then could pray for me? Who then would I pray to transcend an underground, forced to live dark on concrete, in corners, under the wash, hung drying, on the line hardened by still air? What happened to a small girl happened to me. Empty expression, consciousness missing. I believed I was severed from spirit, the essence, buried barely alive. There I learned to avoid God if God came calling. All things small suffered covertly, all things vulnerable left in the palms of men, living solely for control in the violence of destruction, separating skin from bone, in the tossing away of heart beings, devalued for use to perform whatever their God ordered. They studied that God, forcing my baby hands, destroying the things I desperately wanted to comfort. I could be next. Her body was our body, split from mind, all appearing distinctly for common good. Shared purpose, survival. In this world we were willing to leave if we saw fit. My singular mind, unimaginative, limited to his words. He thought he was killing us. I waited for her return, holding to one simple thought that she would. I called her Mama. There was no real tutelary in the house, only contagion, an insidious permeation blocking purity. When tomorrow came, we were tossed 12 steps down. We knew anyone could be her enemy. We watched her devour obstacles in her way, causing head spin, panting to please make her stop. And so appeared a small figure, short pixie, velvet dress twirling in lace socks, black patent. The world outside saw care, carefully constructed, another disguise. Inside left unquestioned is my mind, half unrested, inaccessible by the other side, neither knowing to exist, holding a grave memory of her young body and sweetness she didn't relinquish. How could it be that from so much cruelty she could remain? Only Mama knew us all. Mama architect, Mama witness, Mama building, an Amazon in the frame of our shared body, an orchestra willingly mostly, marching as a hymnal, recognized as a poem, accompanied by a piano, a voice our own. She had been disguised as wardrobe. She did not give up on us, a life raft pushed toward a place, in the very place we needed over and over. Ungraceful, peering, narrow vision. No one knew, only Mama, then us. How much can a small body hold? She isn't present in the interactions I have with clients. I think that would scare her, and she would lose trust in me. Yet she's nearby, and she is a part of the core of a very large system. Her importance is unmeasured. She may be one of the primary reasons I am able to evoke a connection to whomever I am assessing or treating when I meet them outside of the bars of a cell. Because of my access to and relationship with the current core group in my system, I mostly live from the vision of 8, from 8 hearts and vast knowledge. They have gifted me with a fullness that sometimes overtakes me. I went on to work with clients described as treatment resistant, which when defined meant that psychiatric symptoms interfered with their ability to comply with the treatment plan. Thus my team met the clients wherever they were. They suffered from hallucinations, delusions, mania, suicidal depression. It was here that I learned creative approaches to walking beside people who would try and grab at stability or grounding or understanding so that life's daily tasks would not be overwhelming or impossible. Sometimes they needed hospitalization for stabilization and would often remain there for weeks unhappily wanting out. Again, I was faced with a sense of their powerlessness to call the shots in their lives, as I had experienced as a little girl, a child, unheard, ignored, trivialized, left to withstand knowing no way out, which made dissociating a benefit, even if I didn't know I was doing it. I was comfortable and called to this work with those who have direct experience. I was translating it to understand it and combine it with my heart. I found myself next in a maximum security forensic hospital. The patients were sent there by court order, having been found not criminally responsible or not guilty by reason of insanity for a violent offense. In other words, a patient could have committed murder, rape, set fires to, assaulted someone, but at the time of the offense could not comport their behavior to follow the law. because of symptoms of a psychiatric illness. Their stays had no end date. The patient had to progress through security levels by understanding their illness, what causes their decompensation, what controls the symptoms so they can be considered no longer dangerous. Of course, I would read documentation about the patients assigned to me, some describing difficult scenarios, and then I would meet them on a locked ward, and the story that led them there would be muted, and their humanity would surface. I carried a large key like the kind that is seen in movies to enter and exit a castle door. I was very conscious when I opened and closed those doors, as there would be a sign, elopement risk. Some patients wanted out. Again, they had no agency. They did not control their length of stay. I, having the key, absorbed to a small degree what that felt like when I was young and in situations without a key, without an advocate, without an escape plan, and the horrors kept coming. I think this deepened my reliance on altars without knowing they were altars. My role in the family eventually was the rebellious, mouthy kid who could not tolerate injustice in the home. I stood up to those who were unfair and harming my older siblings, who were somehow less vocal. I was bold and sometimes fearless, which had a life of its own in my work and in the streets of a city moving amidst. I felt capable and confident. When I look back, I sense I had a fluidity within, altars surfacing, receding, being protective, being scared. Some patients shuffled along, having been given medication that caused sedation, with its primary use of controlling symptoms, straightening out their minds or their moods. Many were opposed to taking the medications and would not improve, or they lived daily with a numbness, a fogginess. One summer I pursued therapy, not really knowing why. I told my truth as I understood it at the time, and was inaccurately labeled by a clinician who ordered my parent to have me treated. This parent was not a reliable caretaker and was not an advocate for me, and could often be persuaded by people deemed respectable, even though this parent was also arrogant and bullyish. Fighting for myself, I became the parent and shut down the clinician. Somewhere internally, I knew what I shared in that assessment were my ways of coping with untold stories. There was nothing crazy or sick about it. The theme of being misunderstood or reduced to one aspect of yourself surfaced often with the voiceless, unheard, under-resourced client. I had a sensitivity to them. I returned from maternity leave, working for the courts, moving within the jails and prisons, interviewing detained people charged with crimes who may be eligible for release under a court-ordered treatment plan. It was up to my team to determine this and testify in court with our findings. Sometimes all I knew was the name and the alleged crime and what housing unit they were on. I want to read an essay I wrote describing a day in the life of. This is entitled, We as Detainees. Every approach is through a control center, after passing the guard tower, where an officer is standing on alert, with a rifle pointed in the direction of the shadow of the person who is entering the jail. This can be a lengthy process, which sometimes lends itself to a hand frisk if the metal detector beeps that I might be carrying contraband. Usually what the female correctional officer finds is an underwire bra, which could be cause for stopping my entry, given that it could be used as a shank. I am sometimes asked to disrobe and take my shoes off. Who are they protecting, and what do they really think they are learning from this investigative assault? Once through, I have free reign in the maximum security detention center, housing adult men charged with anything from a misdemeanor to a violent felony. They are mostly in the status of pretrial as they wait a date for their case to be heard in court. The wait time is typically 30 days unless one has the capacity to pay bail money. This is a time of crisis for many newly detained, away from what is familiar, dropped or dragged into an environment where they are being controlled, what you eat, when you sleep, whether you get medications that are prescribed, the length of your shower, whether you have access to fresh air and sun. I find myself taking turns onto many stairwells eventually leading down a long corridor alone but for prisoners. I peer through 10-feet windows to the yard where select housing units take turns getting exercise or socializing. It resembles what is seen in the movies, where upward of 50 men are gathering, based on an affiliation or affinity. A few correctional officers are standing by to keep control. It is an unspoken understanding that the detained could overpower the officer if it came to that. There is an echo as I walk through, tested by the men who have a pass from an officer to be out of their cells. They should be on their way to an approved destination. It is often used to catch up with relatives or neighbors. Are you a lawyer? I am asked this often, and when I respond that I am not, and explain my role, each man claims to have bipolar disorder, wanting to be evaluated, wanting some attention. There is no public display of what brought the men to this setting. Offenses are not readily shared as the culture inside informs that some types of crimes are considered more problematic than others. Rapists and child molesters are abhorred, and HIV status among other illnesses is also hushed. One can easily fall victim to the herd mentality that develops for one's own sense of safety. I find my way to the cell block of the inmate I will interview. The stench is overpowering. Body odor, vomit, unbrushed teeth, filthy clothes. It is inhuman and an awful distraction. The density of it remains in my throat for days. I walk the tier looking for 101561. He has lost all identity but for his inmate ID. He is found under a wholly scratchy wool blanket. The heat is blasting, still he is entirely covered, which may be the only way to gain privacy. Sir, excuse me. My voice is of normal tone. There is no movement. He is interrupted all day for reasons that never satisfy him. Mostly count, to ascertain whether he tried to escape. I call again, this time louder over the hum of heaters, the yelling of other men celled on the same tier, which is their only way to be in contact when the cell doors are locked for 23 hours a day. I am dressed this morning intentionally so as not to evoke too much attention. I am there to interview him per a judge's request. It has been suggested by his lawyer that he has a psychiatric condition and the judge would like me to assess him. He has the option to refuse, although that would make the judge displeased. I tell him that whether he chooses to speak to me is voluntary, and he grunts, "Can you get me out?" By now he is inadvertently spewing spit through the cell door. I am far enough away that it lands on my knee. He resembles many men in this city who are fallen and been swept up in ways that have destroyed their health, housing stability, and most importantly, relationships. I get one chance to engage him. The barriers are obvious, among many others. I am outside the bars. I am certain he thinks I couldn't possibly understand or have an interest in him. He has needed to be suspicious and self-protective throughout his life. He has needed to hustle. For him, I am just another white woman, an intrusion. There is more to the story, a full truth that I cannot share with him. I too have known harm, abandonment, shame, and despair, and I know heart. We move into a discourse. Who is interviewing who? Who is interviewing whom? Who within me is meeting him, expressed from the life I have lived? I have prepared for this public display for years, both inadvertently and intentionally. He too has developed a skill set for his survival, assessing me to make a determination to his willingness to engage. He is in a jumpsuit that says property of city jail, reduced to his role as a prisoner without a voice. My clothes read Calvin Klein, and I carry a badge that announces my status. While he is creating distance, I am creating bond. He and I were taught to be silent. He and I were taught to be invisible. We were taught that someone else could control our lives and death. He takes the courageous step of sitting upright. I take the courageous step of attending to him. I am asking him to be fully human in a world that destroys humanity. Still, he does not know that we have things in common. I needed to know the perils of his world without him knowing mine. The art is in the question. He will either rise or fall to the question he meets. I feel no trepidation in following where he chooses to lead. In some ways, I have already been there. I am hoping to replace honor with the historical dishonor. I must be a generous interviewer, a generous listener. I know me. I need to know him. He doesn't know me. I must reveal just enough of myself to him through atypical ways: eye contact, posture, voice tone, attentiveness. I take this seriously, yet it usually comes with ease. There are parts of me who originated from and are designed for this very moment, translating his chosen perspective through my interpretation, filtering his mind and heart through my experience, education, and skill. The outer world wants me to label what I see in their language and for their own comfort and purpose. I try to carry his wholeness, not the fragments he has become. There is no real pressure within. I have gotten to this destination many times, and I move with assuredness that I can find my way. Throughout our interchange, he may be moved by me and let me linger on a topic, or he may become annoyed and try to exert his will. He may be uncomfortable but interested. He may make an attempt to be like Greece, where there is no form of body and no place for me to stand in the content he's sharing. If I can get my footing, I may find grace to modify and redirect. I detest reducing a life for my own comfort, using an approach without flexibility. Instead, I dance with him, let him hand me color. I draw, step back to observe. Images arrive from his storytelling. I describe to him what I hear. He may agree or correct it. What is to be seen is only limited by my own self-imposed parameter, which is an absolute injustice to him. If I am frightened of his world, I could inflict that upon him and see through the lens of societal norms and my own story. In the minds of many, he is a criminal by definition. I am seeking to know from where he came and how. We have now taken our seats, he on the edge of a metal bunk, bolted to the concrete floor. I am on two plastic crates made into a flimsy chair. He is center stage, and I am his director of sorts, who must know when to get out of the way of his being able to be. I know a few things about him: his name, age, legal history, and the statement of charges, the police account of what happened. He is charged with a violent sexual offense. I sound as one voice, yet at least three minds and three perspectives are prominent in preparation for the interview. Each was birthed with an internal assignment and unique purpose for my survival, navigating beyond my early life, which was dominated by sexual violence. I am able to stay put, whereas most would run or would never have found themselves in a jail setting, let alone sitting across from an alleged perpetrator of a crime that impacted my life. Yet here I am, and without hesitation. If fear comes to me, I can have no rhythm. This has become a theme of mine, walking toward the perceived darkness, thinking that when I arrive, I can master it, as before I was just a child. Internal parts of me feel equipped and know we will be successful. Other parts of me feel a sense of responsibility that we be of service to reduce the risk of recidivism. We have dissociative identity disorder. The alters who move within me on this day for this role take up residency in the forefront. They are two women, both with an air of confidence, expressed through different qualities. One is adept in arguing. Her mind is sharp and her speech clear and deliberate. There is a formality about her. She can sense a challenge and can cut through to a desired point. She contests manipulation and irresponsibility. The other has a flow, grounded, open-hearted, fair, and seeks to find common ground. She sees no need for judgment. She is likely experienced as pleasant and convivial. The host, the part of us who is experienced in physical form and known by the public, uses intellect, training, and deep soulfulness. It is she, me, that moves toward people who others despise. As a system, we are drawn to reach for, as a way to reconcile that which we still wish for, to be extricated, to be seen. Although these alters are separate and distinct, we work in harmony, so that the necessary skills of each meld together enough that we can speak in a combined voice for this circumstance. There is no strain here. The altars within me that arrive to meet him is a private occurrence. Years ago, effort was necessary to find internal cooperation. These days, it feels automatic. This process is not known outside of me. This is the very purpose of having DID. I am not certain that I could have performed this work without these capacities. I am in conversation within and in conversation with him. There is a fluidity to this, which allows me to call forth his and my shared complexity. Of note, we cannot be prepared for every encounter. Another altar existing within could find concern in hearing our dialogue, even though they have no role to play and probably should not have found a place of consciousness during the interview. This does occur, and when it does, I tend to these parts internally and provide them with enough that they understand the current situation so that I might continue on in my work. It sounds like a lot and can be occasionally. We have committed ourselves to the care of each altar in gratitude of their existence, which kept us alive. We will never abandon them. There is an excavating in the form of a spiritual interview as two seekers who want to share truths. Knowing is weighty, for me knowing me, for me wanting to discover him. Has anyone ever asked him anything of meaning and waited for the answer? Did the answer serve him? When I was asked the correct question, it led to a sense of freedom through excruciating pain. This is a gift I can lend to him when originating in a poverty of choice, a poverty of agency, a poverty of truth. There can be a pull to descend into the underground, an environment that forces you back into hiding your inner life, as I have done in my work for 40 years, and he is compelled to do while caged. I contend with knowing that my ascension can be silently useful to my work, and now to him, from a battleground to ground level at least. Within the interview, who is keeping secrets? Who is taught, encouraged, and permitted to keep secrets? What purpose does it serve? If he does, he is seen as a con. When I do, I am seen as brilliant. We are asked to be divided selves, he bouncing between tender and macho, for to let his guard down leaves him vulnerable. My defenses can manifest as hypervigilance, as a way to reduce the risk of having another perpetrator take hold of my body, a cage of sorts. We have both experienced a place where people are denied, ignored, separated, harmed, where we watch the guards take our controls. I can distantly empathize with the sense of capture. I am advantaged, as not all who experience this fracturing with DID can call for unity or cooperation or collaboration inside the mind, the body, while inside the jail. We return to the work at hand. With whom am I sitting? Who owns his image or his resemblance? Weaving in and out of collecting data, what impacts how I view him clinically? What am I wanting him to share with me? What do his answers tell me about him? What did he suffer? How did he navigate his hardships? What did he externalize? What does he feel he is owed? What does he think he can control? Was the alleged victim known to him? Was the setting opportunistic? What emotion was prominent? Is this a pattern or a singular event? These are diagnostic questions. I am not there to judge. I take no side. I don't talk at him. Lecturing is absent. I need to ask, then listen, then wonder, then be asked. That is what I would want. That is what I give. When he wonders why I care or understand, I cannot answer directly or personally, dictated by what previous education thought to be unheard of. As a clinician, I don't reveal about myself. This keeps him as them and me as us. I know it is just we. My home environment appeared to be stable, of financial wealth, of formal education, at least from one parent, unless looking, and in those days no one was looking. one would have assumed or projected normalcy, care, investment in the family. This disguise buries the truth, causing even further digging to be needed, as others might find it hard to believe when the truth is told, even within the family. This may be one of the most significant differences between a life like mine and a life like my clients. Their outward appearance mimics difficulty. Difficulty that is seen as expected and accepted, which causes further distance between their reality and the hope for their future. But if you sit with an expanded truth and don't give undue importance to certain life circumstances, one can see that we may not have started in the same place, yet our lives can be viewed as somewhat parallel. This is how I understand my work. This is why my system is brilliant. This is why I have felt I touched people's lives, the discarded, the deranged, the evil. I was able to engage with my clients primarily because I engaged with myself. I gulped down the stories of the underdog, the one who suffered, the one who acted outwardly from their harm, their neglect. And thankfully, my vision, my care, my heart, my essence allowed me to have meaning in these interactions. I thank you for listening, and I'd love to be in touch if you have any interest in reading any more about my personal and my professional experience and the intersection. I self-published a book called Hidden Riot, and it's on Amazon right now, but you can learn about that from my website. And the website is janetambree.com, JaneTambree.com. Again, thank you for joining, and stay safe.